Hey guys, David here with a new review for the latest episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. entitled The Inside Man. They had to put the at the front of it because if Spike Lee found out about it, he might just boycott Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because he boycotts everything. Anyways, he boycotts about some things that are rightfully should be boycotted. But anyways, we got a new episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and this one was very, very interesting, very captivating because it had something that was very different than what we've seen before on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., a show that has superheroes and special effects and tied into the Marvel Universe. It brought something that was tackled somewhat in Captain America the Winter Soldier and is probably going to be fully tackled in Civil War. Politics. Whether or not all this superheroism is right. And we kind of get that a little bit when it comes to the Inhumans in this episode where there's this imposium. I learned a new word today, thanks to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. There's this imposium in which some of the leaders of the world, along with Coulson in disguise and Glenn Talbot, who returns in this episode, are going to attend this imposium in which they're going to discuss what's the right move in order to treat Inhumans. Should they be considered a threat, or should we try to make friends with them? That kind of thing. And throughout the episode, all these political factors that were being played, from the actual discussion about the Inhumans to moments before they go to the Imposium about whether or not they should bring Glenn Talbot, because now serving under his command is Creel from last season, the guy absorbing man, the guy that's able to absorb things by just touching them. He makes a surprise return in this episode as pretty much Talbot's bodyguard. And what I found fascinating is that it even got political with that, whether or not we should bring him, because obviously Hunter and Bobby have trust issues with this guy, because this is the guy who was responsible for the death of Lucy Lawless's character, as well as some of the other people that were rolling with Hunter at the beginning of season 2. And so obviously there's a little bit of bad blood there, as Fitz even said. So him being thrown into the mix, and whether or not Glenn should show up because it'll make the ATCU or ACTU, whatever, look bad, gets political in and of itself. And in the background, we have another storyline with Lincoln and Daisy, which started off as just, more playful, flirtatious banter between the two that we've seen before. But then things took a twist for the interesting, where the possibility of a cure, or a quote-unquote cure for Inhumans, comes into play by the discovery of Fitz and Simmons. And this started to remind me an awful lot of X-Men. Not only the X-Men movies, but simply just the comic books and the universe, in which one of the big things about that universe, about that property, is the political agenda of whether or not mutants should coexist with regular human beings. And I've always found that stuff to be fascinating, because obviously that kind of thing can be applied to real-world issues today: xenophobia, racism, gender equality, all that kind of thing. And so that's where I'm like, see, comic books and superhero related stuff and everything that comes from Marvel and or DC could be important, very important literature in our time today. So I feel like their approach to taking that kind of material and applying it to the Inhuman storyline in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is pretty good. So the Imposium happens, but one of the reasons for why Hunter and Bobby and May decide to tag along undercover is because Talbot suspects that there is an inside man, in which is revealed is actually him. But of course, he's not working this just because he's the mustache twirling villain. We see at the beginning of the episode that there is a family dynamic to Talbot that we weren't really shown that much before. We got hints, but we were never shown how much he really does care for his family, despite putting on this really firm, tough guy persona. And we see the extent of that, where he is willing to betray Coulson to get his son back, who turns out to be an Inhuman himself. So this adds a very cool layer to the character of Talbot, one that I'm hoping to see more of, since Coulson and him kind of make amends by the end of this episode. Once we get through the climax, that was very fun, very exciting. There were some cool lines of dialogue where Talbot's like holding his hand, or even earlier in the episode where he's wearing the kimono. I love the chemistry between Coulson and Talbot within the entire show, and I'm hoping that they keep bringing back this, as well as Creel, who also comes in during that climax and he takes care of those bad guys. That was a really cool moment. I'm hoping to see more of him, because not only could he be a cool character, but I feel like they get the effects for this character right. Whenever he absorbs something, it kind of reminded me an awful lot of the MCU movies, so that was pretty neat. But there's definitely things planted here for future storylines, not only within this, but also within the stuff between Daisy and Lincoln, where they're like whether or not this cure is a good idea, and how are they gonna face the fallout that the fallout or backlash that may happen from it. If there was anything that I didn't like about the episode, is that there were a couple of lines or a couple of moments that just felt kind of routine and been there, done that kind of thing, where I'm like, okay, you have to write that in there because I guess it's classic. Like the classic line of Talbot right after he gets betrayed by Malik, which he should have known better. We had a deal, you know. That moments like that, I'm just like, how many times are we gonna have that same scene or that same line of dialogue whenever a character that you perceive to be a good guy betrays the other good guy, but not for the bad reasons, but more so for a self-preservation reason, or something that is supposed to be sentimental. And they're like, oh, we had a deal, when they end up getting betrayed because they carried the snake, and snakes are known to bite, or in this case, octopuses, since that's the Hydra animal. Anyways, we are left with two very interesting stingers. One is that throughout the episode, we learn a couple of new things of Hive, the alien that is inside Ward's body, about how he can't harm other Inhumans, he can't feed on his own kind, and more of Brett Dalton being able to stay on the show while at the same time being another character, and he really sells it. I never feel like this is Ward. I just feel like Ward's body is literally just walking. He's a dead man walking with this human, with this alien thing infesting on his body, and it's creepy, but it's cool at the same time. By the end of the episode, we learn, however, that he is able to feed off of these people, which I really felt bad for him. And by feeding on them, he was able to kind of regenerate the body, and now we're back to full capacity Ward. Only in this time, it's Hive living inside it. So hopefully we get that same menacing character, and we don't just get Ward 2.0, which I'm trusting they won't, because Brett Dalton has been doing a good job at selling this different persona, and at this point I trust the writers to not write a Grant Ward 2.0. What worries me about that possibly happening is at the beginning he apparently learned, the alien apparently learned everything about Ward by infesting him, and know all the memories, all the stuff. That's kind of how it managed to know all those details about Will when it infested Will's body. So that it could really mess with our Inhuman protagonists' heads, especially Daisy. But at the same time, I don't want them to use that as a crutch to make Ward 2.0 again. Instead, try to stay true to this brand new villain that you just introduced. And then the last stinger, which is, it's exciting, but it's just something to just carry our interest over to next week's episode, is Hunter and Bobby tagging along to Malik's jet over to their secret headquarters and trying to infiltrate the area. So that should be interesting. A lot of great stuff in this episode, barely that I can complain about. So for that, I give The Inside Man a very high 8 out of 10. So let me know what you guys think of this week's episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and what do you hope to see in the remaining episodes that will possibly tie in, especially by how political this week's episode got, to Civil War. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Oh, and one more thing. Imposing.